Board. Just for the record, we want to note that our chairman, Mike Clement, and our board member, Jessica Sarkissian, couldn't be with us today. The first item we'll take action on are the consent agenda items. If anybody is here to speak about any item on the agenda that's got an asterisk, make sure that you fill out a blue card like this and give it to our staff. Do we have any more? Looks like we might have one in the back. We'll just wait just a minute and make sure that we get all of the blue cards before we move forward. Okay, so far we have pulled off item 4B from the consent agenda. We have two cards with respect to case that's listed as ZON 17-00066, both in favor. Are those both applicants' cards, or are those people in favor of the item who wish to speak? It's Chris Luciano and Wendy Rodriguez. Oh, okay, thank you. We'll wait just 1 minute and see if Mr. Wesley is helping somebody else with a card. Okay, so it looks like the only item we are pulling off the consent agenda is item 4B. So what we'll do is board member Boyle is going to be reading into the record all of the items on the consent agenda. We'll do it all in one swoop. We'll make a vote and decide, and then we'll move on to the regular agenda items. Mr. Boyle, would you like to go ahead and read the agenda?
I will. Welcome, everybody. Items on the consent agenda. Item number 2, approval of the minutes from the previous meetings. Minutes from August 15th and August 16th, study sessions and the regular hearing. Item 3A, these are from items 3, take actions on the following zoning cases. Item 3A, ZON 17-00045, District 6. This is the 10,700, 10,800 block of East Southern Avenue, South Side, and the 1,200 through 1,300 blocks of South Signal Butte Road, the West Side. This is a site plan review. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item 3B, ZON 17-00066, District 5, 5139 East Indigo Street, located on the west side of Higley Road and south of McKellips Road. This is a site plan review. Staff recommendation, approval with conditions. Under items number 4, to discuss and make a recommendation to the City Council. Item 4A, Z17-035, District 6, the 2,800 and 2,900 blocks of South Signal Butte Road on the west side, and the 10,600 to 10,800 block of East Guadalupe Road, south side. This is rezoning from AG to LC and a site plan review. Allow the development of a group commercial center. Staff recommendation is continuance to October 18th. 4C, ZON 17-00047, District 5, the 7,200 through 7,400 blocks of East Ray Road, north side, located east of Power Road and on the north side of Ray Road. Council use permit and site plan review. This allows a single retail user of more than 2,500 square feet in a light industrial zoning district. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. 5A, Signal Butte and Guadalupe, District 6. We are discussing taking action on this following preliminary plat. the 2800 to 2900 block of South Signal Butte Road, west side, the 10,600 to 10,800 block of East Guadalupe Road on the south side. This is a preliminary plat. This was continued from the August 16th meeting and a companion case to Z17-035 associated with item 4A. Staff recommendation is continuance to October 18th.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
I motion that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Do
I would second it.
Thank you. All in favor, please vote. Okay, so we'll move on to the regular agenda items now. Since 4B was pulled off consent, we'll put that at the top of the list. Give me just a second here to flip my pages over. Okay, so item 4B, case ZON 17-00040, District 5, the 100 through 200 blocks of South 70th Street. This is a request for a council use permit to convert a former nursing home to an inpatient detox and substance abuse treatment facility. Mr. Ellsworth, would you like to give a presentation?
Yes. Madam Chairman, members of the board, this is a request for a council use permit for an inpatient detoxification and treatment facility. It's located on 70th Street. It's just north of Broadway and east of Power Road. The site itself is the site, the former use of the site was for it was a long-term acute care hospital. What the applicant is proposing is purely a change of use. They're not requesting any modifications to the existing site plan or to the elevations of the building. The type of use that they're requesting requires a council use permit for consideration because of the type of use and facility that it is. As we go through those reviews, there are certain sections of the zoning code that outline the review criteria required as we review council use permits, and there's specifically guidelines for social service facilities. We've outlined how the applicant has met all of those within the staff report. They have meted all those. Part of that requirement is that they submit, as part of the narrative, an operational plan and a good neighbor policy. And what that does is outline things as it would pertain to the operation of the site itself. What are their hours? How do they bring patients in? How do they let them off? What are their security measures? How do they take care of any sanitary issues that may come up? Staff has reviewed all of these and feels that it meets all of those review criteria. We are recommending approval with conditions.
Does anyone have any questions for Tom at this point? Okay, we'll go ahead and invite the applicant up, please.
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name is Rod Jarvis of Earl Curley and Lagarde, address 3101 North Central Avenue in Phoenix. Having attended the study session yesterday morning, it's my belief that you all are very well informed on this case. What I would propose to do is to simply concede to those who are here in interest and then perhaps respond and answer any questions, if that would be all right.
Sure, that's fine.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Okay, so the first card we have here is Jack. So let me grab my glasses here. Jack Steinbach. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Jack, you're opposed to the item and you wish to speak? If you could just state your name and address for the record, and then we'll give you a full 3 minutes to share your thoughts.
Okay, my name is Jack Steinbach. I live at 320 South 70th Street, Unit 13, Mesa, Arizona, along with my wife. Our back boundary is about 40 feet from the boundary of this property that we're talking about. One of the reasons that we decided to move there is because that area where we built, all surrounding was all developed with the exception of these lots, a few house lots that weren't built. So we knew what we were getting into when we moved in. We knew the surroundings. Park on the east, golf course to the south, supermarket to the west, nursing home right behind us, senior living, etc. We were happy with that arrangement, and it seemed to work out real well. Unfortunately, the nursing home closed. I'm talking to the applicant's attorneys here. He has alleviated some concerns, but we believe that in best interest if that facility could still remain for a nursing home. I think there would be more interest from the rest of the residents. There's 59 homes in Hearthstones. From the letter we got from the applicant, it basically said that, in simple language, you don't have a choice on this. This is, the ADA will allow us to do this, but we want to be good neighbors. Well, I respect the fact they want to be good neighbors, but I think 99% of the residents in there would be here today to voice their opinion on this if they did not have the attitude that we can't do anything about it, you can't fight City Hall, that's all said and done. So with that, I am opposed to this granting of the conditional use. Thank you.
Sir, just a quick question. So what specifically are your concerns about this use versus the nursing home?
Well, and I know it's not the same, but we have the methadone treatment in the same block. And about 4:30 in the morning, the cars keep coming, and this goes on for several hours. When they leave, there's a mess out in the road, out in the street. They throw their cans and wrappers and such. And I know this is not the same, but this in the same area of trying to treat has given all the residents there a bad taste.
Did anybody else have any questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We also had a card from Patty Freeman, who is in favor of this item. Would you like to come and speak? No. Okay, thank you. All right. Mr. Jarvis, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you. I have to agree with the last speaker that we are very, very different from the Methadone Center. And let me talk about that just a little bit. The Methadone Center, which, by the way, treats primarily, I believe, heroin addicts by giving them methadone instead of heroin, and that's the extent of the treatment they get. It's an outpatient facility. Over 600 patients at that facility, according to the person that spoke to me there. It's called the New Hope Center. I called them, and they told me we have over 600 patients. And they said that a number of them come every day. Not all, but a number of them do. That treatment center essentially replaces with an illegal drug a permitted drug, and that's all it does. And the receptionist in that center, if you go into the waiting room, is sitting behind bars. That tells you what the center itself thinks about the patients that they're treating and their relationship to them. Those folks are coming and going every day. As you heard, they're lining up outside waiting for it to open. They're leaving trash. And we heard from some of the neighbors in Hearthstone Village that there have been suspicions that there have been break-ins as a result of their exposure to that clientele going in and out. No proof was offered, but that's been the sense. Compare that with us. And not only comparing to us, but compare the Methadone Center before to the Methadone Center after we come in. First of all, we are entirely inpatient. There is one door in and out. All the other doors are locked. So anybody who wants to leave has to go by the front door. Now, we're not a prison. They can leave. But we have stipulated that anybody who is leaving, whether it's because they've graduated from the program or they've decided to leave the program early, every patient who is leaving will be put into a cab, a friend or family car, an Uber, a Lyft, or if they refuse and just decide to walk out the front door, they will be followed, i.e. escorted by one of our staff until they have left the neighborhood. That means until they're out to Broadway or Main or Power Road. We think that provides a very, very secure environment for the neighborhood, much more secure than the Methadone Center. Our folks are not coming and going. We're not creating that traffic. We're not having people stand on the road. Now, I mentioned Methadone Center before us, Methadone Center after us. The after us part is that we will have on-site security 24/7. That means we'll have eyes on that road, and that means we have eyes on those patients. To the Methadone Center, they're coming and going. That means whenever there's eyes on a road or eyes on the back of houses, that means more security. because the people who are out there know that we're watching them. They can see us, and they can see that we can see them. Furthermore, some of the Hearthstone Village neighbors that came to our neighborhood meeting said, would you please reach out to the New Hope Center and suggest to them that they might send some of their patients to your facility to complete their recovery, to complete their addiction treatment, rehabilitation. And we said, absolutely, we will certainly do that. And we will do that once we're up and running. Reach out to the New Hope Center and tell them about what we're offering, and suggest to them that they send their patients over to us as soon as they feel that they're ready to come on over. So we believe that we are going to be creating a much more secure environment. Now, as far as this message about they don't have a choice, that was a paraphrase. What I mentioned in that letter, and mentioned nothing about the city at all, nor did it mention anything about the zoning process in that letter as far as the Americans with Disabilities Act is concerned. That letter referred to the fact that the association to which we belong has already permitted a methadone treatment center as well as another drug treatment facility up on Main Street. And that also under the Americans with Disabilities Act, if you are changing from one protected class under the Americans with Disabilities Act to another protected class in the Americans with Disabilities Act, that associations do not have authority to prohibit that. But I said, nevertheless, despite that legal standing that we have relative to the CCNRs, what we're asking you to do is come to our neighbor meeting, tell us what your concerns are, and we would like to arrive at stipulations and agreements that will make you feel comfortable and secure. That's where that stipulation about people leaving came from. Now, actually, we had worked that out on another case that we had worked through the city of Mesa some months ago, and we applied that here. Nobody had to ask us for that. We offered that up. But we were asking for similar concerns or questions. Any security issue that we haven't dealt with, we're asking people to tell us what we need to do. And that's what that letter was saying. Anyway, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Board Member Allen?
There we go. Mr. Jarvis, my question is, in your facility, what are your hours of operation? I know it's a 24-hour facility. People are there to stay. But is there a lot of activity, people coming and going 24 hours a day?
No. What typically happens, and I'm going to invite my client to come up and correct me if there's anything that I misstate, but I have a lot of personal experience with this kind of facility. What happens is people wake up, they eat, and they begin the day by going into therapy, group therapy sessions, individual therapy sessions. This is all the patients that are there. This isn't, the employees obviously need to come to the site, but other than that, the patients there are the ones who are getting the therapy. Now, on 1 or 2 evenings a week, or maybe more depending on how many patients are there, family members may be invited to family therapy sessions because it's important that the family get involved in recovery too. We know that addiction has its roots often in the family system, and the family system that they come from needs to heal, not only learn how to help the patient to continue rehabilitation, but the family itself needs to rehabilitate. It needs to recognize its own emotional illnesses that are being passed on to the patients. And so family members will be invited on occasion to come. Often that's well into the therapy. That is not immediately, not the first week or 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 weeks that the patient's in, but later once the patient's ready. So you will have some family members coming probably a few evenings a week at most. Other than that, it's employees and the patients there who are staying there. Now, on occasions, those patients may get into a van and go somewhere to perform a service project somewhere in the community, or maybe to do some equine therapy, take some horses and ride out into the desert a bit or something like that. But for the most part, those patients, they arrive, they stay, they work. They typically go to those therapy sessions, they journal. We learned that there's an awful lot of therapy in writing down your thoughts. You'll sometimes be given a prompt and you'll be writing about that. There's a lot of organized thinking that goes into writing, and that organized thinking helps the patient to start to progress and to process the therapy and what he or she has been learning in those therapy sessions. So you'll have that. You'll also have reading assignments, and often that journaling will be about the reading assignments. And then there will be exercise time. There's going to be yoga classes. There's going to be exercise facilities, that sort of thing. So that's what goes on there, and most of it's very internalized.
I guess that was my question, was most activity done within your site?
Yes.
Not necessarily out? I mean, you said there's a lot of coming and going from the methadone center, and I don't know what the hours to that are, if it's, all hours of the night. I just didn't know if there's going to be a conflict between the two.
No, not at all.
Okay.
People are not coming and going.
Okay.
They typically get driven there, and then the family member or friend drives away. The parking lot is typically just going to be a few visitors, family members, or the employees. That's about it.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for the applicant? No? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, now it's time to discuss amongst ourselves. Or I'll even take a motion if somebody's ready to offer one up.
I'll give it a shot then. I would make a motion that we approve zoning case ZON 17-00040, District 5, the 100 block through 200 blocks of South 70th Street. I'd approve with conditions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I second that motion.
Okay, all in favor, please vote. Okay, go ahead and that one passes. And for the couple who came, thank you for expressing your concerns. And I'm sorry, sometimes things don't work out. And one of those facilities, the methadone clinic, is allowed by use without the need of a use permit. And this particular one is. Sometimes the zoning regulations are interesting. Yes, unless I'm wrong.
No, you're fine. But I was just going to add to that, this is a recommendation on to the city council for this council use permit. So that the planned schedule for this is that that would be on council agenda the first Monday of November, which I believe is the 6th. I don't have that calendar in front of me. So you have that opportunity to, it's a public hearing, to get an opportunity to come speak if desired.
Will the neighbors all be notified of that hearing, or the signs, I'm sure probably posted, already have the city council dates on there? So if people who didn't attend want to go to the council meeting, what ways can they find out about that?
They can find out by contacting staff.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to item 6A. This is KZ 17-044 in District 3, the 1300 through 1400 blocks of West Main Street, located west of Alma School on the north side of Main Street on approximately 3 acres. This is a modification of the bonus intensity zone overlay council use permit and site plan to allow for the development of a multi-residence development in the NC zoning district with potential commercial services. And Leslie Davis is the planner. If you'd like to give us a presentation.
Chair, members of the board. This is a site that was approved for a development with townhomes back in 2007. The back portion of the site is already being developed for townhomes. The front portion was approved to have live-work units. So it was going to have 13 townhomes and 13 commercial office space areas on the ground floor that somebody could live above and have their business down at the bottom, or there could be a business there. So it allowed a little bit of flexibility there. They're coming through to modify that council use permit that allowed them to have that residential with the commercial to allow more flexibility in the way that they establish those units. They're going to have 26 residential units with the ground floor as an optional office or retail space. So they're still offering that, but it gives a little more flexibility. The ground floor could end up being an apartment use, or not an apartment use, a bedroom or residential use. They have requested one minor modification, which is why they're having to modify their BIZ overlay, and that's for the parking. But they have made up for that space with the on-street parking that went in on Main Street. So there really isn't going to be a shortage, but if there had been, it's along the light rail corridor, so it makes sense to do that. The site plan is only slightly changing due to the fact that there are going to be more garage doors on that back side. So there's some minor tweaks to the site plan, but really it's fitting into the same envelope footprint for the building that was previously approved. They're in conformance with the general plan, West Main area plan. They've provided an acceptable operational plan and good neighbor policy to comply with the requirements of the council use permit, and satisfied the requirements for the BIZ overlay. Staff has recommended approval with conditions. We are working with the applicant on the elevation approval, which I believe the board may want to address. So be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Leslie?
I might have one. So just remind me, with a 10 or 11 year gap, what was permitting and approvals just maintained, or do they not expire in any way for the requirement to kind of reapproach maybe the look or the feel or the overall zoning approach of it?
Madam Chair, Board Member Assel, they do have, our 2011 code did build in some expirations to previous site plans. In this case, they did have the BIZ overlay. They also have vested essentially their site plan through building that back portion. So theirs didn't expire, but because they're coming in to make these modifications to the way that building is going to be designed, that's why they're here before you. Otherwise, they could go forward with the building as approved. They wouldn't have to go through any of these because it is vested.
Thank you for the clarification.
Board Member Boyle.
Well, let me begin by saying I love this project. When I take developers around the area, we eat at the Eat Bistro across the street, and I say, look at this. This is what Mesa's going to become. This is the new thing. We need projects like this one. That being said, I don't feel like the exterior, which was approved 10 years ago, fits now with the look that Mesa's trying to do. 10 years ago, we didn't have a light rail coming down the corridor. A lot has changed in the last 10 years. So I go back and forth on this, but I say, you know what? I didn't move back from New York to Mesa and decide to try and make the city better and sit hours and hours on this board to just let anything kind of slide through that goes through. So it gives me great concern. Two things. One is that Mesa, we've been doing this a lot. Something that Mesa had said, oh, we want to put commercial here, and then the board, and then someone will come and say, oh, can we change this to residential? And that happens quite frequently here on the board, and here it's happening again. Oh, this was all reserved for commercial, and that's the original idea, but now we're going to give them the option to residential, and Mesa kind of keeps offsetting its commercial viability by just filling everything with residential. I'm not sure that's what our city wants to become, and when we envision the future of Mesa and we come up with these plans, 2020 or 2040 or 2050, we say, well, we need a certain balance of commercial and residential, and then we seem to always sort of steer residential pretty hard. So that's the, more tied exactly to this thing. The other is this is a facade from, this is Robert Venturi. It's even got the big part right there has got the little cut in it, and that skyscraper that Venturi designed in the 70s in New York or the early 80s. It's now 2017. We want people to come through and see that Mesa is a future city and that Mesa is moving towards the future. And this is sort of saying, well, Mesa's really kind of 1982. So I would strongly recommend that we either have this go back to design review so that they can review it, and then we can come up with a modern facade that says this is what our city wants to become based on all the changes that would happen. That's because I would rather, they're the ones that are actually supposed to say this, and they don't really get a say at this point with all the additional criteria. That's my thought.
I had one question for you, Tim. So I've driven by here a lot, and I just pulled it up again. So we have what's already in construction or been constructed. Would you hope that the design changes drastically from what's already been constructed, so that you would want some harmony with what's behind there? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but is that what you're saying, or what are you saying?
Yeah, well, harmony is certainly important, but what's behind it is going to be, I believe, almost completely blocked by this, and this is going to be, right, this is going to be what people see. They're going to come into Mesa, and this is going to be what they see. And I think we are something different than we were when this was originally approved.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure I understood where you were.
But there's several ways to create harmony. It doesn't have to be exactly what's on the inside and on the facade.
Do we know? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to see if the applicant had a concern with reviewing this once again with design review and seeing if maybe there's some updated recommendations, keeping that harmony, finding something that might fit the board today.
Thank you. Vice Chair Dalkey and members of the board, my name is Fred Woods, Woods Associates Architects, and I'm the applicant in this request. And our whole idea was we made a modification, of these buildings, and the owner has been successfully been able to resurrect this project and keep it going over the years. And now he's at a point where, there's viability to do this front part. And our hope is we want to continue with this. We want approval of our request, and we'd like to continue on. We believe that it's important that the architecture tie into the existing architecture that's being done in the back. And even though you can't see it, it's community and it's village that we have there. So we think it's important, and I understand and I appreciate there's different ideas, about that. But we would like to proceed. We would like approval from this board and go to City Council and go through the design, administrative design process as we've planned and as we're proceeding and as the owner has allocated funds to do. If you have any questions about the elevations or the project, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Could I ask maybe what kind of a hardship would it take to run it through design review again? And maybe it's you and maybe it's staff that could explain what would be the setback to doing that, or the cost perhaps to go through that again. Either one.
Vice Chair, Board Member Boyd, we're just looking at some of that. And before I answer that question, I'll review something else. In the city code for the BIZ, in order to receive a BIZ, it does, one of the standards that needs to be met is that provide distinctive superior quality design, and the code references some standards for that. So that's sort of what staff will be looking at as we look at this and work with the applicant to finalize that exterior design, and hearing some of the comments from the board can help with that. The way this is currently set for items, as we discussed a minute ago, items that you take action on that are going on to City Council, they'll be introduced on October 16th and heard November the 6th. Just kind of the way the calendar falls this time. For items on your October board meeting, which will be October 18th, they'll be introduced on November the 6th and then heard 2 weeks later on November 20th. So waiting a month, if you, again, one of the options we talked about is, at this point, continuing this case, let us continue to work with the applicant on those design review issues. So hopefully have them resolved before your October meeting. Doing that really only delays them 2 weeks ultimately, from the 6th of November to the 20th of November. Whether it's just through staff or going to the design review board if we put them on the October design review board meeting.
But then what that does is that puts the onus on us, the planning and zoning board, to kind of approve a look when it's really design review's job to do that. Is that, I mean, it's sort of not exactly the way that was
We
intended to go.
wouldn't be approving the look, but we were sparking a conversation to be had with staff to approve the look.
Correct. So again, if you took that route of continuance to your October meeting, either again, whether it's through staff or in conjunction with the design review board, with their meeting on October 10th, it gives us that chance to look at that and come back and let you know what we are ready to approve, hopefully at that point, and you can see it and take that in consideration with your recommendation onto City Council for approval or not approval of the proposal.
So if I understand it right, you could talk to design review in between
We
the two?
could put this on the October 10 meeting if we felt like we needed their input if we felt like we weren't resolving it at the staff level.
Okay, so then this would be you making a decision to move on to design review. This wouldn't be us making it. We would just say, you guys make the call. That's what we're,
Correct.
that's that way to do it.
Correct, or the other alternative.
You're suggesting a continuance just to talk about.
That is an option. Again, it's for the board to consider if there is enough concern about this issue. And again, relate it back to the code that does require superior design for the VIZ. The other option that we did talk about yesterday morning is you could put a stip on here that it does go to design review. That would be a stip that would really happen after the fact. It'd go to council if they approved it with that stip. Then after all the approvals, it would go to design review, and then you wouldn't be able to consider that as part of your final decision.
Okay, that's a stipulation.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying. Okay, so if we approve this with a stipulation that it goes back to design review, it goes on from us to, on to city council, council say they approve the project or approve the request, and then as part of that stipulation, you turn it around and take it back to DRB at that point. So you're talking December meeting?
Again, depending on what the applicant wanted to do, if they saw that as a stip that you put on there and
They
would
could do it.
assume that council is going to keep the same stip, they could go ahead and apply for it ahead of time.
Do it ahead
And
of time.
potentially be on the November DR board,
Right.
which would be, again, before council would act, and potentially have that all resolved before it actually got to
So
council.
it could be either way.
Could be either way.
With that stipulation, and then they wouldn't lose any time, maybe 2 weeks' time frame, possibly?
Possibly.
But the problem is if the DRB has issues with it, that postpones you even more, or maybe, well, how does it work with the DRB? They can deny it, the case if they want to, but it seems like they generally like to work with the applicant to get it to a point where it can be approved, right?
Correct.
But still, I don't imagine that you want to, but what route would you like to go? I won't say it for you, based on all these options that you've heard.
Well, the route we would like to go is that you approve it, and we go to city council, and they approve it. And then we work with Mr. Wesley in getting administrative approval of the design, which I'm more than confident that, we'll have a successful and a quality project. We've done a lot of projects with administrative approval with Mesa, and they're not easy. So we're more than comfortable with that. If for some reason you don't have confidence in your planning director and you want us to go this other route, I'm glad to do that. Mr. Druckman is here, and timing is all right with us. We will do it. There will be additional expense to have to notice neighbors of the design review and so forth. It's only money. So, but just so you know that, it's a miracle this project is getting built. And we hope to get it on, but the owner does not have an unlimited budget, on this project, and I've never heard of an owner that does have an unlimited budget on it. But we're more than confident to go back through design review. We're not embarrassed about this project at all. And if there are some other ideas and so forth, we'll certainly consider, other ideas. But my experience has been lots of people have different ideas on how things should look and how they should go together. And we think what we've presented is reasonable and makes sense. But if that's your concern, that we'd be happy to take that stipulation and go through design review, and timing-wise, would just be fine with us.
Thank you. Sorry, Jennifer, you're next.
Go ahead. I just had a couple of questions to Board Member Boyle. On the design, are you talking about a facade change or actually a different design for the units, or the thing of residential, commercial? Where are you standing in your concerns?
Right, well, I can't dictate the right design. I would love something that reflects architecture of the 2010s, which is the area that we're in now. This, to me, reflects the architecture of the 1980s, which was
You're
quite a
just
long
talking
time
about the
ago.
facade of the property?
Yeah, I want it to look like, oh, this is what we're becoming. This is what we want Mesa to look like for the next 50 years. Because everyone's going to look at this, and the next group that comes through is going to model theirs sort of off of this. And we're going to have a lot of projects like this coming through. This is America. And that's the thing. I love the risk that you took, and you're pulling it off, and you're selling them everything. That's fantastic. I want everyone that sees this to say, oh, this is what Mesa is. Mesa is the future. It's this thing happening. I mean, you're going to come down Main Street, you'll come down Tempe, you'll see all those new modern buildings in Tempe, and then you're going to hit Mesa, and suddenly it's going to look very 1980s. It's going to look very, very different. I think we want to have a similar look of the future and the new things that are happening, the new materials that we're using now in buildings, and the new looks that we're using.
So we're only talking about a facade change or of the architecture, nothing more as
Oh yeah, no,
design or
the interiors
use?
are fantastic. You should go, if you haven't yet, you should go
Yeah,
tour them.
they're
The
good
interiors of
things.
these buildings are just gorgeous.
Right, and the use is,
The use concerns me a little bit because, again, Mesa always seems to veer off to more residential than anything else. We say, oh, let's do commercial, and then we put residential in there. I think that's a larger problem that the city has that maybe we should have some say and we should have some concern about, because I don't believe that creates a balanced city. You know, you make your plans and then you're supposed to follow through with them. And if you make your plans, then you always switch to something else. I don't feel like that's
To
the
their,
best way to
to their
go.
defense on the commercial versus residential, it's really just an option, correct? Or are we leaving the commercial option, or are we completely switching?
It's an option.
Option.
Available with this.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, that's more of a market-driven thing, which could be great, you know?
Yeah,
Rather than sit vacant, you know, some options, which is interesting. The facade, I agree. There's a subjective, designers could talk all day long in a room. I totally agree with that because I am one. But you know, it's been a long time. I'm not opposed to working through that, and I'm not, you know, not exactly sure the best way to go about it if it's design review, if it's staff, and I do have confidence in my planning director, but you know, I also know that it could be good to get some eyes on it. You know, I mean, it's an important piece right on the front. I don't necessarily think we're going to take away from what's going on behind it by necessarily doing something not drastic, but work the front, maybe do some undulation, something that starts to give it some dimension up above where everyone's going to be looking. And I agree, it's a fun project. It really is. I have no concerns for the overall direction and the zoning and things like that.
Board Member Allen?
And I liked the project. I liked it when it came in the first time. I agree with Board Member Boyle and Board Member Astle, their comments about the design, the types of materials, you know, some kind of a variation to that. But I definitely have, you know, faith in our planning staff. I believe that they know exactly what they're doing. That being said, I think that we should send it back to the DRB. I mean, really, that's their role in the city, is to make it look good, and it's our city. You know, we talk about quality projects all the time, and I think that's where we need to take it, is to take it back to them and let them take a look at it and give us their feedback. I mean, you're a creative architect. You know how to change it up and to make it look like it's something that we're proud of, because we're definitely proud of the development. We just want to make the design reflect that of what we want our city to be. That's where I'm at.
Jennifer, did you have anything else?
no, I just want to make the comment, we agree that it's a quality development, and I haven't seen it myself, but I've heard many people speak about seeing the townhomes. And I think just having the exterior, it'd be a wonderful catalyst on that stretch of the city to have something that kind of pops out and sets a standard of a new feel to improve the area. So, and just some facade improvements, I think some things will really set the stage for what you already have on the inside and for what we are trying to project as a redevelopment in our downtown.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Woods?
May I ask a question?
This is Mike
Come on.
Druckman. He's the owner of
Yes,
the
please.
project.
Just state your name for the record, please.
I'm Mike Druckman, and I'm the manager of the real estate funds that own this parcel and the project. One of the things we've done here is we've stuck to the existing footprint. We've essentially done away with the commercial, because all you have to do is drive around Mesa and you see how much vacant commercial there is available. I don't want to build something I can't sell. So I guess my question is, if we're going to have to go back and rethink this whole thing, are we going to have the flexibility of redoing the footprint? Because we have something that is, we fit it, Fred has done a great job fitting what we've got into the existing footprint. If it's a new ball game, then are we going to have some flexibility on that footprint? And if we are, we can actually make it better than it is now. And that was my question. Is that something, we open this up again for the front two buildings, or are we stuck with the same footprint?
Let me ask Mr. Wesley, do they have the ability to do that at the DRB, or will we have to see it again as a site plan change?
Vice Chair Board, they sort of have that option to go back and change it however much they want to. And so depending on how much they would change it would tell us where they go. If they're staying still pretty much within the overall footprint and area, the drive aisles, and which I would think they would, those are pretty well established. It really doesn't change the site plan that significantly. It's changed the individual floor plans and those footprints a little bit. So they're certainly welcome to do that if that's a preference, if they want to do that. That does, again, get us to a continuance, so those can be generated and come back, so you see what that modification would be.
That was going to be my question, and maybe yours too.
My question was, would it constitute a site plan modification? Sounds to me like maybe it would, or minor modification.
Yeah, it could, from what I think he's saying, all that could be handled administratively, either if they weren't doing, right now they're having to modify the BIZ and change the CUP. That's what's really got it in front of you. It's not the site plan or the DR. Those could have all just been handled administratively. And again, depending upon a route, I don't want to confuse things too much. You could move forward with an approval of this and come back and do an admin change like that after the fact. Would be a possibility. But so, what's been discussed so far doesn't necessitate that you are changing the footprints of the individual.
No, we would really prefer not to.
It's, if I think going back to Board Member Duff's question, I think what Board Member Boyle was particularly talking about is really just looking at the skin.
Right.
And looking at new materials, more modern materials, and kind of changing that up a little bit more. That wouldn't really affect the site plan or the footprints. Very minor footprint changes, if any. And so it wouldn't require that, but if you wanted to do that, certainly you could.
No, I don't think we want to do that. But I just was curious and asked the question.
If it gives you the freedom to kind of break this up a little bit and do some of the new things that people do dimensionally with architecture, I think I'd be 2 thumbs up on if changing the footprint allows you to kind of really explore this and do something that's really the crown jewel of the new Mesa. I'd be all for that.
Well, I think we're already the crown jewel of that section of Mesa.
Easily the crowner jewel.
There you go. Thanks.
Thank you.
I would like to add just one comment on the project, that I do have a preference, just to put it out there. There is nothing that I'm requesting on our approval. But I do have a preference for a commercial along Main Street as an activation of creating connectivity in our city and for an economic benefit. And the live-work model is something along the light rail that is a good model. And I know it's difficult now, but to leave that option in your planning as part of the project instead of just pure residential.
We think the flex space on the ground floor does that.
Yeah.
The problem that we have is we are using proceeds of sale to continue the project. We're using the same money over and over again. And when I look around, all you have to do is go down to Southern Avenue and Dobson and see how much empty vacant space there is. Also, I was fortunate enough yesterday morning to come to the planning meeting, and I stopped at a coffee shop across from the Fine Arts Center. And it would seem to me, and there's a lot of vacancy there as well, it would seem to me that that should really be, downtown should really be the hub of the commercial. We're about 2 miles west of that. And, you know, that may end up by being there, but it's not going to happen today.
Well, I realize that the current status of the vacancy rates and what's going on, but we're trying to look ahead and what we feel is going to be the use of our downtown and looking 10 years ahead, 20 and even further. And
I'm looking 3 years ahead. So
yeah. So I think for the viability of a project
Yeah.
in the long term,
Right.
it would serve a good purpose to have a space that would be a flex space. I understand not dictating it has to stay commercial because of the current situation, but being in the form-based code, which I believe it is, right? No, it's outside that, okay, never mind. That part. But having the flexibility that it would accommodate
Right.
office, retail, and a live-work environment
Right.
and being that flex space.
Well, we think we've done that with that flex space,
Yes.
yeah. Well, thank you.
Right. To be sure, this is a live-work project, and that space is there, and which makes it very unique. So, you know, we're not giving that up. So,
Yeah, just a quick comment. I'm totally in favor of having that option for commercial. I think that really makes it work, and it would be a great asset to the community, no matter how long it takes. Hopefully it won't take too long, but I agree with you. I know it's tough with the market, and you don't want to limit yourself, but I think we can hope that it would work out as a successful project.
well, when we started this project, the light rail, nobody would have bet that the light rail would have been there. We were kind of hoping the light rail would come, and so here we are. So.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Anybody have any other questions?
Go ahead, John. I'll ask you.
If you don't mind jumping in here real quick. As written today, the staff report, again, coming back to that section of the code, this does require the superior quality design. From the staff perspective in preparing the report, we've stepped it that we would continue working with the applicant on that piece of it, you know, after the fact, to reach that level. Hearing, you know, some concern, and I think it's a valid and important concern. This is a very visible piece. We do want to make sure we get it right. Going forward, it is going to set a standard for the area. The option is that I'm comfortable with and I think would work is the continuance for a month. That gives us that additional month to go ahead and focus on that design, the modifications to the facade with the applicant, working with the design review board, going to their work session on October 10th, getting their feedback. So hopefully when we come back to the October meeting, we can potentially take that step off because we've gotten there and show you what we've come to an agreement on, and then hopefully you feel like it meets that standard in the zoning code and you're ready to make that recommendation on the council. Ultimately, it really only delays the applicant 2 weeks, and doing that doesn't really cost them anything extra because we're really keeping that DR on the admin side of things, but we'll get the input from the board through the process.
Good. Yeah.
That sounds like.
We vote for that.
Yeah, a good
So
solution.
we will agree to that.
Thank
So.
you, John. Good idea.
You want a motion?
All right, so
Yeah.
yeah, I think we're ready. Yeah, someone to be challenged with the motion?
Yeah, that's the tricky thing. How do you want me to motion this, John?
It's just a
Continuance to your October 18th,
Okay.
I believe it is, meeting.
Okay, so I make a motion for item Z117-004, District 3, the 1300 through 1400 blocks of West Main Street. The preliminary plat for West Main Street Village, that we continue it to the October meeting, October 18th, planning and zoning meeting. Is that correct?
I would second that.
Thank you.
Did that include the preliminary plat? I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
was kind of,
he read
okay.
the plat into the motion too. Okay, now we're on to item 6B, case ZON 17-00184, the 0 to 100 block of South Pomeroy, located west of Mesa Drive, south of Main Street. This is a rezone from T5MS Transit to T5MSF Transit to allow for the development of a mixed-use project to include residential and commercial land uses with a parking structure. And we're going to have Mr. McVeigh give us a presentation.
Chair Dalkey, board members, my name is Jeff McVeigh. I'm the manager of downtown transformation for the city. I'm representing the city as this is a city-owned parcel, and we are the ones initiating this rezone as the applicant. Since it is a form-based code rezoning, I thought I would go through a few slides just to give us that broad view primer of form-based code. To remind you, form-based code is how it's different from our traditional Euclidean zoning. It flips the script. Use becomes less important than the form of the buildings that we're working with, whereas today use is more important than the building itself. What this allows us to do is let a building have its true useful life. A building can change over time. Market demand changes over time, so people can change what the use of the building is because the use tables are much more flexible. How this is handled is through the transect. So when you describe a transect, you might as well just call that the zoning districts. In cities that go from rural to urban, you have transects that go from T1 to T6. In Mesa, the transects start at T3, which is kind of a single family transect, up to T6, which is your most densely urban. This is our form-based code regulating plan. This is as it is applied in downtown today. It is a floating zone, which means that the downtown zoning districts that were adopted in 1986-ish, somewhere around that time frame, Shelley probably knows better than me, they are there. Those are the base zoning district. This is in a floating zone where if somebody wants to develop under the form-based code, they would come in and do what is called an opt-in. It's a very simple form that you fill out. It says what district you're from, going to, you sign it, we record it, and your rezoning has happened without any kind of public hearing because we've already gone through the process of council applying this to the ground, just not making it the base zoning district. In Mesa, the regulating plan relates to the transects that are up on the screen now. So there's T3 through T6, but within those, this is very tailored to Mesa. So within the T4 transect, you'll have T4 neighborhood, you'll have T4 neighborhood flex, and you'll have T4 Main Street. Simply because that T4 represents the scale, the size of the structure, whether it's a neighborhood, a flex, or a main street represents where you are, where you're actually applying it. So in certain cases, we want different standards for a T4 scale building on Main Street for that retail, that really transparent storefront versus a T4 neighborhood where it's more about apartments or townhouses, things along that line. Once we have the transects applied, we kind of go down this series of steps. The first of that is this is actually the first step. The building form, I should describe that a little bit. The building form is essentially, it's defining the box. It's defining where a building can be placed. It's defining how big it is, minimum sizes. It's defining things like parking, how much transparency you have, building height, things along that line. So it's really saying, here's where you can plant it. It doesn't have anything to do with what it looks like. It's all about the box. Building type takes it to that next level. So within each transect, certain building types are appropriate. In the T6 transect, the single family village is not going to be an appropriate building type, but the high rise would be. So when you look on the sheet within the form-based code, those little black boxes that probably don't show up so well on your screens, those reflect the transect that those building types are appropriate for. Taking it down to the next step is the private frontage type. So this is defining how a building interacts with the public street. So how does that building frontage interact with pedestrians? If you're in a single family neighborhood, you have a yard. If you're in a Main Street district, you have a storefront. So it's reflecting where you are in the environment so that the building is interacting with the street and the pedestrian in an appropriate way. That was a really quick and high-level overview. If there's any questions, I'm really happy to answer those, so please stop me at any point.
Just real quick, Jeff. The flex, again, just means it can become residential or be commercial. Okay.
Correct. So the flex zones, where they're applied, and I'll go back to the regulating plan map. Flex zones, if you can see those on there, where they're applied, they're not right on Main Street, but they're essentially the next district off of Main Street. So it's that intent that we know that the market's going to change. Similar to the discussion you were having on the case before. I agree with them. That section of Alma School is not prime for commercial use right now. 10 years down the road, though, It could be. And having that flexibility to change over time is really great. And that's really what the flex zones are intended to do. The idea being that you build with that commercial mindset in place so that over time, if demand warrants, a townhouse's first floor can become an office space, and they can have residential above it. So for this specific request, the reason we're actually here asking for this rezoning is because we're working with a developer, Tony Wall over here. He's joining us today, so if there's any questions specific to the developer, we can ask Tony to come up as well. We've been working for several months on this project. It's a really exciting project. It's the idea of taking an existing parking structure that we have next to the City Courts building on Pomeroy Street, doing structural enhancements to that parking structure so we can build 4 levels of residential market rate apartments above that. In addition to that, taking a surface parking lot that's along Main Street and building a 6-story building with another 3-level parking structure for commercial use, as well as some micro units above that hopefully, if things work out well, have a potential to have a relationship with Benedictine University. In total, we're talking about 3 acres, well over 300,000 square feet of building, almost 300, could be 250 to 300 dwelling units, 20,000 square feet of commercial, which will include which will include restaurant, retail, and office space. We're talking about building heights that are going to represent the urban downtown that we want, 80 feet in some cases. And the idea, this is really, I'm sorry if I'm acting too much like a planning nerd, but this is really exciting to me. The idea, parking garage, taking a parking garage, a really underutilized parking garage in this case. It's an 800 space parking garage, and we probably have 150 permits for it. So taking that and finding a good use for it, knowing how the future we're going with, autonomous vehicles and the way vehicles are going, this could be a really model for the city to be out there showing off. In addition to this, the developer is all about creating an environment around his development. So streetscape improvements for Pomeroy are being negotiated as part of the city's development agreement, as well as improvements to Gateway Park to open it up so when you're sitting on the Mesa Drive light rail station and you're looking towards this, you have a view shed that draws your attention to it. So what's on the screen now is a conceptual site plan. And I'm sure you're just waiting for me to turn the next page because this is just not showing you anything. This is now starting to get some of these renderings. This is the Main Street building. This is looking west on Main Street. This is the building that's being refined the most. So this is why it's a black and white line, a black and white drawing versus a colored rendering, because this one is still somewhat a moving target. But this shows you that high ceiling first floor for retail and restaurants, the creative office space above that's actually going to project out over the sidewalk and have angled windows so that when you're standing there you can actually look over the sidewalk, and then another 3 or 4 stories of residential above that. And then this view is coming from Gateway Park as if you're looking to the south and west. This is where you start to see the apartment towers that are built apart on top of the existing parking garage. So the primary tower here, the mouse doesn't show, but the primary tower in the middle, that is the elevator tower, and at each deck there is actually a community space for the residents. So there will be, whether it's a spot with some chairs and couches and chairs to get together, or whether they have a fire pit on the top floor. Is that right? Yep. So this is going to be a fun space. And then this is actually where you start getting that real good view of what the townhouse is. So it's a mix of residential types too. So it goes from micro units to 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom to 2,000 plus square foot townhomes, 3-story townhomes that are wrapping the parking garage and starting to screen that parking garage and making that much nicer streetscape. So having wowed you with the renderings, now I have to go back to the actual reason that we're here today, and it's the rezoning. So the request essentially is to change the line of where the separation between T5 Main Street and T5 Main Street Flex is. It will move the T5 Main Street Flex north to about 70 feet south of the Main Street right-of-way. The reason this request is being made is that if we apply T5 Main Street as it is shown today, we would be required, and any development that came in would be required to do commercial retail space, not just commercial office, commercial retail, active commercial space along Main Street and along Pomeroy. And it doesn't make sense to believe that we're going to have enough commercial activity at this time to warrant requiring commercial space along Pomeroy and then having it sit empty. That's one of the things that's always causing me so much concern when you drive along the light rail alignment. How many apartments have that first floor retail, and it's just a lost leader that they just put it in knowing that they aren't going to make their money off of it. By switching to flex, that gives us that opportunity to let this transition over time. And also, I think very good is getting us that additional building type, additional residential type. So this is truly a mix of different type of residential in the neighborhood. So with that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Mr. Wall's here too, if you have any specific ones for the developer.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Jeff? No?
That's as clear as can be, thank you.
I'm happy to take compliments as well. We're
I have
happy
some of those, yeah.
Thank you for designing a building in this decade.
That's your developer and his architects.
Thank you.
No, this is really exciting, and you did a great job of presenting it, and thank you to the developer for bringing this to the city. I'm really, really excited about this. So, thank you, Jeff.
Welcome.
Any other discussion or a motion?
I can just go ahead and make a motion that we approve case number ZON 17-00184, District 4, the 0 to 100 block of South Pomeroy on the west side, located west of Mesa Drive and south of Main Street. Rezone it from a mix of use, rezone from T5MS Transect to T5MSF Transect. This will allow for the development of a mixed-use project, include residential and commercial land uses with a parking structure.
Thank you. We have a second?
And it's a associated plat.
And the associated plat,
Thank you.
The approval of conditions and the associated plan, that's what you said.
as recommended, the approval with conditions.
All right. Did we have a second? Did I catch that?
Yeah.
Okay, you did. Okay. I'll second that. Okay. All in favor, please vote. All right. Ayes have it. Thank you. All right. Mr. Wesley, do we have any other business? Okay.
Actually, yes.
Anybody like to motion to adjourn? Shelley? We have a motion to adjourn?
I would make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay.
I second that, Shelley.
All in favor, say aye, please, or vote, sorry. Okay.